Good morning, everybody. My name is Antti Saarnio. I'm coming from the company Air Impact, which is building a digital platform for nature-based projects. And welcome to the panel session today at the COP28, where we are discussing the urgency to act against deforestation, tropical deforestation, and impact on the biodiversity as well. Before we go to the panel discussion, I will present one of the actions what we are proceeding with together with currently eight African nature-based projects. And that action is called the Great Green Action. We are all seeing quite a lot of announcements and pledges. Unfortunately, we are also seeing that not many of those pledges actually come through, and especially when we follow what is happening on the ground in Africa or elsewhere, we can see that projects are not actually getting funded. So lots of financial announcements, less so action on how to finance the projects. At the same time, the market has difficulties to understand which projects are good, which projects are bad. We do have, obviously, any market will have good and bad actors. So we are having a challenging task here. And then at the same time, for sure, there are great projects, but maybe the great projects are not the best ones who are visible, great in marketing. Maybe they are great in action. So we should analyze the great projects. At the same time, the deforestation is in motion. It's mentioned to be about 1/3 of one of the reasons behind the climate change. So if we don't do anything, we'll not reach the targets what we are aiming for. So it's not about carbon. Do we finance the projects which are fighting against the deforestation and finance the communities? Currently, the trees, tropical trees, don't really have value for the communities. Of course, if something is free, then it's misused. We need to find ways to bring value to those forests and trees. In 2022, the global rate of tropical deforestation was 4 million hectares. I made my own calculations that we would need something like 30,000 to 40,000 projects to reverse the deforestation rate. I basically just took from the project what we are doing ourselves in Tanzania, assuming that an average project could be reforesting about 300 hectares per year on average. And then I just calculated from there that we need tens of thousands of projects for this. Personally, of course, you could assume that large projects, industrialized projects could implement bigger areas. But what we are seeing is that the work with the communities, work with the people on the ground is very granular work. There's lots of education. It doesn't really work well on the big scale. It has to happen on a lower level. So that's why we believe that the future should be that there should be more projects on the ground working on these areas. I come from a startup world. In startup world, there's the probability of success for a startup is something like 10 to 15%. What I see here on the ground, the task with the deforestation or reforestation task is super complicated and quite demanding. I think we will not have a 100% success rate on these projects either. We probably have hopefully 20% or 25%. We need to build mechanisms which understand that not every project will succeed. And that basically means that we need to have lots of projects, but then we have to be able to kind of stop the funding or kind of make milestone-based funding solutions where if projects are not able to proceed or progress, then the funding is directed to the projects which are performing. And my estimate is that today we have about 1,000 nature-based projects. It's an estimate because, and it's a carbon removal, reforestation, agroforestry project. There's probably about maybe 300-400 Verra or Plan V or Gold Standard certified projects, but there's quite a lot of projects which are in early stage, which are not yet in the registry. So that's why I thought that we might be closer. It could be 2,000 also, but let's say that's in a ballpark. Anyways, it means that we need to grow this number of projects by 20 times or something like that. And that is only possible if we start thinking, what is the financial monitoring infrastructure which enables this amount of projects existing, but at the same time, it protects the market and also the nature from a kind of projects which are not succeeding or are not high on integrity. So one thing what we have noticed we basically analyzed 30 projects around Africa. Not deeply, but we went through, we screened them, and then we visited eight of them projects, and 8 of the projects are now joining this Great Green Action. And what was very similar for every project was that they were having lack of funding, and there were offers on the table, but most of the offers came from investors which were looking for maximum profit and utilizing their negotiation power so that they would basically take almost everything what this project is producing on there. And I don't think that it's a right approach, because actually you need these entrepreneurs, nature entrepreneurs who are developing this project. They need to be committed to the projects for 30 years, or there has to be mechanisms. So I don't think that it's a right solution that a big investment fund comes and purchases everything in the beginning. It has to go in different stages. So what is Great Green Action? Is a network of projects which all commit to high integrity it's a commitment from their side and our side. They also commit to end-to-end transparency. Air Impact is providing the technological platform to organize the end-to-end transparency. It includes monitoring on multiple levels, satellite, mobile monitoring as well. So when there's patrolling on the projects, you can follow what is the patrolling activity, but it also provides transparency to the community, how much communities are earning, what's happening on the communities, and then most importantly, where the money is actually going, so that the money actually goes to the places where it's promised to go, mostly for the communities, but also, of course, to the project implementation. And then the model what we are promoting and encouraging with the Great Green Action is milestone-based. In our own project, funds go to a trust structure, and they are released to the projects as the project is making progress. And we are encouraging same structure for all the projects participating on the Great Green Action. And we believe that that is a fundamental element, being able to scale into large number of projects. Otherwise, it will not be possible in this kind of risky environments. So now I'd like to show a short video about Great Green Action, where we are showing some of the projects participating in. I can mention that the projects are from Malawi and Ghana, and of course we are welcoming. Okay, I think we can now go into the panel discussion phase. So maybe I will introduce and welcome Dr. Michele Menekon to join the panel from PAMS Foundation, and then Niklas Kaskela from what was, Niklas, now your organization nowadays? Compensate Foundation also, yes. And then Kevin Juma from Nature Conservancy. Welcome. We might take the other microphone as well. So it's okay. So first of all, the video what you saw was very encouraging and positive, but we all know that the reality is complicated and complex, and we have lots of problems in there, and it's not straightforward road to scale to tens of thousands of projects, and we are already seeing that there are lots of problems in there. Maybe we start from the kind of going through each of your view that how we should build this new how we should build the infrastructure which is supporting reversing the deforestation trend, if that is the target. And maybe Dr. Menekon, Michele, if you want to start with.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. That's not an easy question with not an easy answer. I would say that it's very complex. And the main reason is that despite nature is known, I mean, well known since very long time, is basically provides everything we need in terms of society, civilization, production, economy. We have been struggling for a very long time to understand that nature has a clear value. And we have been using nature as a, something that comes for free. That's why we are in this situation now. And to solve this, of course, I mean, what is happening now is very interesting, because for the first time, there's a market related to nature. It means that we can allocate value to the natural elements that we use for our, economic processes and, to sustain our societies. But the same system that is now trying to solve the problem is the system that has created the problem. And there's, we have also to work on the understanding level to really understand what we are doing. And the risk is to have, let's say, an industrialized approach, because now nature is becoming a big asset. And this could lead to, big organization and big investors to lead the pathway to what we all call now the solution. I think this is not going to work. And what we should do, for the first time probably in history, is to recognize the value of the actual stewards of nature, which is probably between 300 and 500 million people, who are exactly where they need to be. They are being also partly the driver because of complex reasons of destruction. And if they are properly empowered, they could become the drivers of the solution. To do this, the most important thing is to build a different infrastructure, which follows, of course, a different way of thinking to the solution. One super important thing is to lower the level to enter these kind of projects. These projects shouldn't be, I've been a conservationist for many years, and I think conservationists should aim at losing their job. I mean, that's the goal. That's the ultimate goal. Conservation shouldn't be a discipline. Conservation should be something within the fabric of the society, because it means, protecting what actually make us working, make us living. And so this is the right time, the right point in time where we should really start with the population, the local communities, the citizens. So all these projects, or let's call all the activities that can collectively reverse the trend, must be probably mostly small and medium projects run by citizens, by small organizations, by local communities in their own countries, as a way the society works towards possible solutions, not something run by big organization, the finance world. Absolutely, finance is important because it provides the funding to do this, but we have to really think the way we are going to do it. So lowering the level, knowledge exchange, and really put the people in the condition to work for their own future. And I think this is possible, but we really need to change the way we think the solution.
Thank you, Mikkel. And Nicholas, if you want to continue, you can take your own angle. You don't have to continue from the same, but you have your own perspective looking from the compensate angle. You've been analyzing quite many projects earlier and found that not so many have been high quality.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I think you need to put the mic somewhere off so that, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm the chairman of the Compensate Foundation. We're a Finnish foundation that works to improve integrity of carbon and nature markets. And there's a lot of work there to do. So you mentioned that we've evaluated a lot of projects, and it's true. We created together with some leading forest and climate scientists criteria with which to evaluate nature-based carbon projects. And in the past 4 years, 3-4 years, we've evaluated over 170. And the result has been that less than 7%, or just over 7% of these projects, in our opinion, would be good enough for a buyer to make an offset claim from them. So in the carbon market, to kind of purchase them and use them for an offset claim. And even those, in our view, should be overcompensated heavily to mitigate remaining risks. So I think this says a lot about the sort of underlying quality of projects on the market right now. It's not necessarily the fault of the local communities or the project developers, but it's a flawed market because it's been under-regulated, and the market has been allowed to design its own rules, or the big market actors in the market have sort of self-regulated it. I'm talking about international carbon standards and the big companies that have been dominant in the market. And probably they have had good intentions in a way, but they have kind of maybe taken a wrong turn at some point and followed the wrong path. And right now the carbon market is in turmoil for a good reason, because there have been scandal after scandal after scandal that international media has written about, and we've helped a lot of journalists actually discover these flaws. And right now, I think it could be an opportunity to regain trust in this market. But unfortunately, what I'm seeing right now is, like Michele said, the same people and the same organizations that in some way broke the market are now attempting to fix it. And I'm not sure if I trust them, to be honest. What I think we need is government intervention and regulation, and not like we should give up with this fallacy that this market can self-regulate itself towards high integrity. I think it's clear that we've tried it a few times and it hasn't worked really. So right now, if we want this market to grow and become a meaningful vehicle to direct capital into these projects, which we desperately need, I think we first need to build high integrity and regulation, and then the market will grow, because essentially it's built on trust, and right now there is no trust.
Just let's continue that discussion. I want to understand from you that how do we build that kind of a regulator, which probably needs to be international regulator in that case. But let's come back to that. And Kevin, you are developing and involved in many projects through your organization. So you have your own angle. That how do you manage how do you see the quality aspect on how do we make sure that these projects are are delivering and are high integrity and so on.
Thanks so much. So at the Nature Conservancy, we have two accelerators, if I would call it, mainly focused on building, as you say, there's a supply gap on bringing and developing high quality nature-based solution projects. So the Africa Forest Carbon Catalyst mainly is providing upfront financing in form of seed capital and grants, as well as technical assistance. We're supporting different project types, about 23 project types across the continent from East to West Africa. But then we also have a similar initiative, but at a global level, known as the Natural Climate Solution Accelerator. And what the Natural Climate Solution Accelerator does, it's like an R&D lab and a technical assistance vehicle. We have a team of experts within the Nature Conservancy that are working with project owners, communities to ensure, one, at the project level, that issues such as project accounting and other integrity concerns are addressed during the project design. So it comes, the Natural Climate Solutions technical support comes in at around project design as the project matures. But as you say, there are concerns. We know there are several projects that are claiming to be delivering climate action, and they aren't delivering measurable, verifiable outcomes on the ground. So it requires a concerted effort. As my colleagues have said, also the role of a proper regulatory framework and strong regulatory framework for that matter. And we need to bring all stakeholders together, proper design, bottom-up approach, working with communities from ideation stage to really create projects that deliver not only climate action, biodiversity conservation, and uplifting livelihoods of the communities. So the Nature Conservancy, I think there are three fundamental elements that we are looking at. One, on high integrity development of carbon projects. Two, is maximizing returns to the communities and for climate action, so proper benefit sharing arrangements. And then three, we are looking at also responsible use of offsets at the demand side. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So maybe let's start looking into one problem, which I think we kind of ignore in all the certification discussions. Like the CCB standard is now the Carbon Integrity Council, or what's the official name? They're recommending now 40 years period for monitoring and permanence monitoring. At the same time, our organizations are not many are 40 years old, and it's kind of even investment organizations have difficulties to give a commitment of being there for 40 years. So to Michele, an easy question now, that how do you think that this should be solved? Because I think it's obvious that organizations, we can't assume that they are there for 40 years. So how should we solve this?
Thank you. Thank you for the easy question. Okay, first we have to be realistic. We don't know how we're gonna do this. I mean, we can plan, we can think, but of course what we can do is, and also we human beings, we are not used to think, that long term. We are not able. I mean, we really don't function that way. And but again, what I would say, and this is also the way I feel, if you start a project, first, the project proponent cannot buy land from the community. So it's not something that, we buy the land and we set up a system in which, we have full control of the land, full control of the variables that are going to to evolve during the project time, during the 40 years. It's not going to happen that way. So for 40 years, we are dealing with people, families, different generations, and they stay the owners of their land. Means that the first thing we have to think is, how do we make these people not regretting their decision for 40 years? This is the first thing and the most important thing. If they are happy for 40 years, the project will stay 40 years. And I think our main, concern should be, how do we make them happy for 40 years? The solution lie in the answer of that question. Of course, there are instruments. For example, in our case, we are designing the way we hope we could make them happy for 40 years. First, by ensuring that for 40 years they're going to be paid. So the money that will start flowing into the project from the market, they are going to be deposited into a trust that have a clear commitment with the communities, meaning that you have to start from day one how you will ensure that 40 years later the money are still available, even if you are not there anymore. Maybe the organization is not there anymore. So I think we have to think really, how do we cope with a local society, families, the importance of the land, because in many cases we work with local farmers and the land is their main asset. So the day they decide to give you some of their land, for them is a very big decision. And that decision, again, should not be regretted by their, grandson and grandnephews and so on. So, of course, I don't have a clear answer, but I think the answer lies in this: how we make sure that the people we work with that actually trust us and give us their land are happy for 40 years. And I think we should maybe spend another couple of weeks here, discussing how we can do that.
Thank you, Michele. And I think it sounds to me that project proponents should be like their role should be to start the project and guide it through, but then we should really kind of include in the project mechanism that the responsibility is transferred to the community, because I don't think that it's credible that different projects will be there actively, even if they are actively 5 years after. I think it's a good achievement, but like after 30 years or 20 years, it's not really credible claim. Niklas, you mentioned about the regulation on being the most. It's not.
Again, well, if I may answer the permanence question. So the 40 years, it's not a problem if the buyer recognizes the risks. And that's one of the fundamental problems in this market, is that we have tried to create assets or credits that allow companies or buyers to claim that they have offset fossil fuels, when in reality they haven't. There's no way you can offset fossil fuel emissions with nature-based solutions where the permanence is always a risk and there are other risks involved. But the risks and adjusting the claim and saying that, yes, we have supported local communities, there is a climate impact, a carbon impact here, but there are many risks, and we acknowledge that it's maximum 40 years, and even that is might be a stretch, or we don't know. But with this idea of creating an equivalency between your emissions and then the credits that you buy, we've created kind of a monster that doesn't allow the market to recognize these risks. And then that what happens at the end of the value chain of that carbon credit, or maybe even biodiversity credit or nature credit or something else, is a lie. And that creates all kinds of problems, because then these companies who invest in the market with good intentions probably and buy these credits, not all of them, maybe the fossil fuel companies don't have good intentions, but some of them do, some other companies do, they'll be challenged with greenwashing accusations, or media will look into them because they're lying, and it's right to challenge them. But they could also use these credits in a more honest way and recognize the risks and create a new claim. So I think for me, that's a solution to the permanence problem, because it's not really a problem unless you make it a problem. But I think to go to your regulation, like what kind of regulation we need, I don't think governments have the capacity to regulate the supply side, because it's very complex and it's always a local context. And it's not possible. But what we can regulate is the demand side and the claims that the buyers make. And through that, I think we can create a more healthy market by, for example, recognizing that these offset counterbalancing claims are never going to be true. So let's not allow them to be made. But let's also guide companies on what kind of claims they can make. And that can, I think, become the path for a more healthy market and actually a growth of a more honest market.
Yeah, thank you. Just one, maybe going back to this permanence issue, I think, because there are two sides basically. There's the market side, which currently works with the offsetting side, and I acknowledge that this is true from the market side, that if they acknowledge the risk, it's not the problem. But at the same time, we should look this as an activity which is stopping the deforestation, and from that perspective, the permanence is a problem, because then we just do things which is not creating action.
No, I don't think we should not aim for the longest permanence possible, but let's be honest that there are risks, right? And we can have mechanisms like buffer pools and other risk mitigation mechanisms in order to sort of mitigate the problem there. But still, let's acknowledge that it exists, even though we take all measures into place. And I'm going to challenge you a bit on that the market wants offsets. I think we're moving away from that paradigm slowly but surely towards more contribution models, and I think that's a positive trend. And now we need to speed that trend up, and because I think it's only right now us who work in the market who follow these issues, who acknowledge this trend, and companies are the demand side is not yet aware of this trend. We need to make them more aware and say that it's okay to make a contribution claim. That's actually a more truthful claim, and your stakeholders and your clients will be happy with such a claim.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Maybe if we move a little bit on, we've been talking about and market, the carbon credit has been in the headlines a lot, but a rising topic is biodiversity, and the importance of biodiversity. Maybe we are just starting to understand what is for example, the tropical deforestation. We are thinking about the carbon impact, but we don't even understand what is the impact of the lost habitat on that. It's so complex. Kevin, is in your projects, are you having biodiversity already as a kind of a planning aspect, or is it up and coming? How do you see the biodiversity currently in your projects?
Thank you very much. I quickly also wanted to weigh in on the questions you raised, and let me not belabor on the permanence issue, but just on the regulation work. It's rightfully mentioned that government don't have capacity to regulate, especially on the supply side. But what can be done? I think mostly for good intent, we see rushed regulation, but we really need to work with governments. What is the best practice on equitable, fair regulatory framework from elsewhere that we could, expose our local governments to. So I think we need to not run away from that space, but work closely with the governments. On the biodiversity front, I think all the projects that we are supporting, it's a major co-benefit that we are looking at. You're looking at biodiversity uplift, especially projects that are in the tropical rainforests. We are working in projects that have some endemic species, species on IUCN red list, and we are putting measures to track and really look at the uplift of biodiversity, both flora and fauna, in the landscapes where we work. But not only complying and conforming to what the standards and regulations of carbon markets prescribe, but it's an intentional activity within the organization that all the projects that we are supporting, be it a carbon project or not, are really working towards uplifting biodiversity. I know there's also the conversations currently around the broader nature markets and the broader biodiversity markets. We are careful on not to carry forward the complexities and issues we are seeing within the carbon markets, the integrity concerns. And I think it would also be very difficult in terms of measurements and the rest. So we're careful to ensure that all the claims that will be made from a biodiversity perspective or biodiversity uplift are really measurable claims. And we are not going to go into the same mistakes that we've seen in the carbon markets and criticisms that we've seen of late.
Maybe to Michele, who is evolutionary biologist here, could you explain us that why biodiversity is such an important topic, perhaps more important than carbon even?
I would say that what is happening now, the carbon market, is I see it as hopefully the first step towards a better direction. So for the first time, we have finally understood that we have to recognize the value of certain elements out there. What before were just externalities, we get them for free. And is funny because we are, kind of a smart organism, and we are struggling to understand a fundamental thing for various reasons. That's okay. And but basically we are understanding this by using like a shortcut, and the shortcut is the market. We are used to think in terms of market, and finally someone say, okay, let's try to create a market to, like, to like when you deal with children, you have to find the right way to convey the message. And we are the children. There's a big task, and the market is the shortcut to make the children behave a little bit better. But of course, what we should aim at is to understand fully the value of what is out there. And this also goes into the direction of the permanence of the project. In these 40 years, we should start understanding that the issue is not just the global warming or the climate change or the biodiversity loss, is the relationship that we establish with what is out there. And start working on biodiversity is actually the next step, because biodiversity is way more complex than carbon. Is way more complex to be in terms of understanding what it is, understanding the way it works, understanding how to measure, selecting the metrics, selecting the tools, linking all this stuff to the market. It will be, I think, an extremely interesting exercise, but an extremely complex exercise. And I don't even know how it's going to actually to develop. The good stuff, I think the really good stuff, is that we are here today, and a lot of other people doing the same, hopefully, trying to, to make this working. But the byproduct is that the world is understanding the importance of this thing. And again, what we have to what we have to avoid is to turn all these super important and fundamental elements for our survival as a species. Because as we always say, you know, the planet is fine. Planet went through much worse things than what is happening now. The problem is for us, for our civilization, for our society, for our future, I mean, basically, if we don't take it right, the product will be a lot of suffering. So the good stuff is that we are discussing these things. We will find a solution, but it must be a cultural solution. It must be knowledge. It must be awareness. Then the technical solution, how to measure, how to link the measurements to a market, fine, we will find that. But I think we have to be always aware that actually the thing is understanding the complexity out there, using shortcuts, which means linking certain elements to a market. So this could push, you know, economy, living, possibly uplifting the livelihood, you know, of many more people. But it must be a cultural, you know, progression, a cultural change. But then we can discuss on the technicalities, how to measure it and what kind of tools. Happy to do it. But I think we will find a solution. And of course, as soon as there's a market, also there's a push to refine the way we do things, because there's the clear, you know, and immediate interest.
So, Niklas, we are both from Finland, and at least I used to think that the Finnish forest and how we maintain our forests are done in a perfect way, and I was proud about that once. But then when I started going into Africa and discussing with the experts like Michele here, I started understanding that maybe they are not really forests. They are like, I first time understood that they are maybe plantations. And then I started realizing that, okay, maybe that's the reason why I don't see many animals also in the Finnish forests. Like, it's rare incident that you so maybe you see a squirrel there. But but I understood that you are now working with the biodiversity in Finland. So could you explain that what is happening there, and how is Finland taking, what kind of actions are happening there?
Yeah, first to comment on your observation. Actually, the Finnish Nature Panel yesterday published a report that Finland has lost 70% of its nature, even though I think 80% of our country is covered by forests, or forest-like plantations, probably. Yes, exactly. Trees. They have nothing to do necessarily with the natural forest. They might look like it for someone. And I was under the same impression for a long time until I realized that they're not real forests. But yes, so Finland is maybe a interesting example in the biodiversity market, which is now emerging. It's still very nascent, I have to say. Like, there's been like a few deals here and there, and there's a lot of hype, but nothing's really happening in terms of transactions yet. But I think I think we need a biodiversity market or a nature market. And actually, many of these projects that we consider as carbon projects, their home should be in nature markets and biodiversity markets. It's more complex, perhaps, but I think it still might make more sense to kind of try to capitalize on the biodiversity and perhaps create like project-specific claims rather than try to say you have offset something or something like that. But in Finland, we have an interesting situation where we have a regulation for a biodiversity market, but we don't have a market yet. and this is interesting because in carbon markets, we've gone the other way in Finland, and they're completely dead, the carbon markets in Finland, because they were not regulated. And everybody lost trust in them because they were very shady project developers and trying to or didn't really understand how to create high integrity credits. So now we had a push from leading biologists and the Finnish Nature Panel and also quite critical NGOs to create a biodiversity offset market in a way and regulate that. And the idea would have been that it would have been compulsory to sort of if you're planning a new highway or a new building area or something, you would need to there would be an obligation to offset those the harm you're causing. Unfortunately, it became a voluntary mechanism, but it's still now regulated, and it's regulated pretty well. And we'll see now what happens if it actually results in a market. And I'm trying to, in my role in Finland, trying to create that market. There would be a lot of supply, lots of areas we can restore, peatlands, these like monocultural forests, etc. But there's no supply demand yet, because companies they would love to, invest in this market, but they don't know what they can claim yet. They don't know what they can say, and they're very wary about greenwashing because the carbon market is full of it. So I think we need to figure out not just the metrics and like the calculating the impacts of these projects, but also what can the buyer say when they purchase a biodiversity credit, for example. We haven't really, the hype is all about like the supply side right now, but we need to talk about the demand as well.
Do you think earlier in Finnish history, Finland has been quite good place to develop new things? It's like a small, compact decision-making environment also. Do you think that Finland could take a role in so kind of experimenting how this kind of a biodiversity measurement and legislation should work?
Possibly, but we have very strong interests that are opposing these markets as well. The forest industry is a big player in my country, in our country, and they see these markets as a threat. So possibly, but I think it'll be very hard work to sort of counter these traditional forestry markets with the new market that actually wants these trees to stay alive instead of being clear cut.
Maybe I'd like to ask from everybody last few words as an advice to us when we are moving forward with Great Green Action and with these projects we are working with. What would be your advice to us? What should we do? What's like one advice basically per person? Maybe Kevin can start.
I'll give you two.
Thank you.
One is look for ways to compensate landowners who are currently protecting their land, so that we don't have a perverse incentive. So let's look at mechanisms, be it countries, be it landowners where we're working, and they've been doing they have positive contribution towards, protection or restoration of their land. Two, it's great work you're doing, and I saw it's more skewed towards removals. I think that's where more concerted efforts needs to be put. It requires significant upfront investment, and I think we need to put more effort, and you need to put more effort in such project types with the different landowners, smallholders, and in difficult places that are very important and critical from a biodiversity, climate, and livelihood perspective.
I'm thinking.
If we think that out there, also here at COP, there's different communities represented by, different people. We have the governments, we have the industries, we have companies, we have youth protesting, young European, African, Asian, guys out there protesting. And usually when I saw that for the first time, of course, I knew that would have been that way, but everyone is passing by them. And actually, theoretically, we are doing this for them. They should be our guest of honor. So my suggestion would be, let's choose very carefully the community to work with.
I think what you're doing sounds really, really like well thought, and there's a lot of integrity there. I would just advise you to keep hold of that, because I think a lot of initiatives in the carbon markets lost that integrity at some point, even though they probably had good intentions in the beginning. And I would also recommend to be super honest in what you're selling, and don't create marketing and communications around it that's not true. And I think that might be like a winning formula, hopefully, in a market where there's very little trust at the moment.
Thank you for the advices. All of them were great. And thank you for the panelists. Excellent discussion. And then we'll continue the great green action. And yeah, thank you for the audience as well.
Yes, let's do a picture. Good photo. You've got a good camera.